journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Guys, today's such an exciting day because we are at the point where we're talking about the advantages and disadvantages of peace. And why I'm so excited about today is because you heart-centered world changers are primarily rooted in compassion, which the thought around compassion is you win, I lose. It's all about the other person. It's all about service, which is such a beautiful thing. But if you want to check out the last episode about this, so episode 47, the advantages and disadvantages of compassionate emotion, it can be amazing, but the downside is burnout, frustration, resentment, all kinds of things. And so when we talk about the advantages and disadvantages of peace, this is our next level where magic happens for you guys, because the core thought around peace is actually we all win or we're not playing this game. And so I know I didn't do my normal intro, but listen, for those who are new to the podcast, this whole series about the advantages and disadvantages of different emotions is rooted in cognitive triangle, so basic psychology theory, which says that your thoughts leads to emotions, which leads to behaviors. And when we're doing a behavior that we don't want to engage in anymore, we can work backwards using the emotion as an indicator of what's actually happening to the core subconscious thought that's driving the behavior. So for my folks who are dealing with imposter phenomenon, which is the belief that you're not good enough, qualified, or worthy of the title you have, your job, awards, all the amazing things, and that you're worried that people are going to figure out that you're not worthy of those things, compassion is actually the primary energy that drives a lot of that behavior, because you're so focused on other people winning that you put yourself last, which drives the burnout, the resentment, all those things, right? Why peace is my favorite emotion to talk to people who are experiencing imposter syndrome is because when we talk about the core thought of we all win or we don't play, it's actually rooted in the belief that you are worthy of a win, which I know sounds very simple, but when someone dealing with imposter syndrome actually experiences a true win, you're never going to want to go back to living a compassionate lifestyle, okay? And again, compassion's amazing, but context is very, very important. And we have to and want to give from a full cup, not from emptiness, right? So I'm going to give a couple of examples to illustrate the point. So as a business owner, the first time I had a client pay my full asking price, it was a massive win, right? So people who are in business who deal with imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon oftentimes will devalue their own services. They'll offer discounts. They will ask the other person to name their price. These are all usually indicators that you don't think you're worthy of your actual dollar amount on the price tag you charge for your services or your products, right? And so the idea as a business owner that somebody actually saw my literal and figurative value and wanted to part with their money because they saw that the value in the exchange of money for the result that they were getting by working with me was mind-blowing and world-changing for me. The reality is that it feels really amazing to have a true win-win. Now, with people that I'm first working with, when I ask them what a win looks like for them, they'll usually say something like, oh, I just want the other person to win. It feels really good to me when they win. Therefore, I win. It's not 100% true, especially if you're experiencing resentment, frustration, and burnout. There's actually a part of your psyche that's saying that you do want something back and you're not asking for that thing. Okay. And so most of the time it takes quite a bit of work with the people that I get to work with for them to understand what the true win actually looks like for them. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. I'm going to give you some other examples to illustrate the point first, okay? The anti-child exploitation ops that I used to run. For me, the true win was getting people to show up to the operation because it meant that they actually bought into my idea and the vision of the future that I saw in terms of protecting children. So when I started on my operational journey in terms of I used to run large scale operations. I did these all over the world. I've trained law enforcement, prosecutors, judges on how to protect children from sexual exploitation. And as a visionary, which folks who are listening to this podcast, you are here because the reality is you're a visionary. You see a future that doesn't exist and you want to create that future. And so for me, it was seeing justice spaces where people are collaborating because I believe we get more done together rather than individually doing the work ourselves. I believe that collaboration results in us being more efficient in getting our wins. My weaknesses are covered by someone else's strengths and vice versa. And so the idea of proposing an operation to people who could say yes or no, and then they said yes was a massive win for me. Okay. So they sacrificed their weekends, their time off, their downtime, or whatever to partner and co create this future season of justice for folks where people are held accountable for unsavory things and kids are protected. That makes me feel really good. If that doesn't make you feel really good hearing me talk about that, then we need to talk a little bit more about what a true win looks like for you, right? Ultimately, we want to get to the emotional output of peace, which the core thought is around we all win or we don't play, okay? In relationships, ooh, this was such a big one for me, you guys. So this was actually the first time that I did the internal work myself to create a mutually beneficial win-win, and it was really, really hard. And it's such a silly example, but I'm going to be super honest with you guys. So just like most other people, I used to give and give and give in my relationships, and I actually created a pattern of me over functioning in the relationship, and it led to resentment. So I was a little bit resentful of my spouse to a certain degree for some time because I was doing the majority of the chores around the house. I was running the errands. I was doing the cooking. And I was frustrated. And even though my cognitive thinking was, I love my husband, I actually really enjoy doing chores and having a clean house and cooking and stuff like that. I didn't understand why I was so resentful and frustrated doing things that I loved for a person that I loved until I realized it was because I actually was not asking for a win. And so I remember being in couples therapy and this therapist, I've talked about this before, but if you're new here, this therapist was like, well, what is a need being filled look like for you, Alani? Like, what do you need from your spouse right now? And I just remembered feeling super ashamed because I realized in that moment that I had been so focused on serving other people around me that I didn't even know what I needed from my spouse to feel better. All I knew was that I felt awful. And I had to take a couple of weeks to think about it. And I had to show up to the next session with my homework being done, which was, what does Alani need? And ultimately, what I needed first was a hug, which sounds so stupid when I say it out loud. But when I tell you the fear that was created in my body, when I realized I am very starved of physical and emotional connection because of over-functioning barriers that I put in place, which meant that I had to stop over-functioning and working to receive love from my spouse. And I had to actually ask him to fill a need that he didn't ultimately have to fill. I can ask him for a hug. He can say no. And in that moment, that would have been such a massive, crushing moment for me because what I really needed was that hug from my spouse, right? But this was when I started to see what a true win looked like, right? So the win for me was receiving something that I had to be vulnerable in asking about, and that the other person had to be willing to give to me. And when I went to ask my husband, like the therapist was like, okay, what is it? Like, turn to your husband, ask him for what you need. I had a hoodie on, and I remember using the hoodie to cover my face because I was so guilt-ridden in asking my own husband for a hug, which sounds ridiculous. I don't even know that he knows that story, but that's the reality I experienced in that moment, right? And so when we talk about it started with a hug, but then it progressed to other things like asking my spouse to unload the dishwasher, right? Like these are very simple, stupid things. But for you who are listening, who are used to serving others, these are very difficult exercises for us in the beginning. And so it's just like if you're really big into fitness, you know that you have to work out and eat your greens if you want to be lean and have muscle. But it's very, very difficult to do. So I want to encourage you, if you're on the beginning of this journey, let's say you lost your job and you were over functioning in that space, or you had a breakup, or you're just in a space where you're rock bottom and you're over it and you've busted your butt loving on other people and it's just not working and you know you need a system overhaul. This is where I would start for you is understand what your basic need is, okay? Now, ultimately, the win-win that I created when I asked my spouse to unload the dishwasher was I got to know that he actually valued me and what I did for our family. But the win for him was he got a less resentful spouse who showed up way more happy. And it was a win-win for everybody. It was actually pretty revolutionary for my marriage because when you're, and this is actually one of the disadvantages of peace emotion is oftentimes you might show up and overfix, right? Because you've been deemed a fixer. This is both an incredible thing and it can also be a detriment. But as soon as I let go my expectation of what I expected from my spouse, I started asking for it and then recognizing that he could say yes or no. That was his right. I was way less resentful, way more happy, way more connected. It was miraculous in my marriage, and it all hinged on me changing myself. Okay. So, going back to the advantages of peace emotion, this energy is actually found in all of the greatest leaders in all areas of life. So, when you look at very high functioning, very inspirational people, chances are that peace is one of the key emotions that they lead with. These folks operate much more in a strategic space, which means that you have a wider perspective on what's happening rather than just this one tiny little like section that's closer to the ground, right? So it's sort of like when you're on the ground walking around, you have your perspective, you can see immediately around your surroundings. But as soon as you go 10 feet up, now you can see a much bigger area, right? You have better perspective around what's happening. You go up 100 feet and then a mile, and then you're in space. And now you realize you're a tiny speck of dust on a planet in a galaxy that's part of millions of other galaxies. And then you realize it's not actually all about me. And so keep in mind that most of the rest of the world is stuck in victim and anger energy. So it's levels 1 and levels 2. And so go back and listen to those episodes if you haven't actually listened to them, because this is where the majority of the world lives. And so, for those who want a quick recap, so level 1 is victim energy. The core thought is, I never win. This is where we boo hoo, right? And even though it sucks, like it's really not good to be in this space long term, it can actually be very beneficial short term because when we're feeling victimy, it usually means we're depleted, we're tired, we need our cup to be filled. That is a totally normal, totally human experience. And this is where you're vulnerable. You reach out for help. You get a coach, your therapist, your friends, whatever tool you need to love on yourself to fill that cup. That's where the magic happens. The downside is most people live in this and they have that learned helplessness and then they become unproductive and like it's just not a good situation, right? Level 2 is I win, you lose. So this is where anger and control come in. This is also where the world operates, right? Because people don't want to be a victim anymore. They start to control the situation around them so that they can ultimately benefit. This is where selfishness lives. Now, the advantage of anger and control energy is you can actually save a lot of people. So the justice system lives in level 2 energy. It's very black and white, very much I win, you lose, right? There's no gray area that covers the complexity of life. And people who live in anger and control energy tend to micromanage other people around them. And we all have had that person on our team. And it's awful, it's miserable, right? One step up from anger is forgiveness energy. And the core thought is, I win and you can win too. So this is like not as icky feeling long term as victim and anger energy, but it's also kind of lukewarm. It's not the greatest, right? So there's a time and a space to forgive people because we want to discharge anger. We don't want to be in angry spaces. This is where we take responsibility for our part in creating the situation. But also, when it comes to forgiveness, you don't want to stay in there forever because this is I'm fine land. So when people say like I'm fine, it's not really fine. It's not awful, it's not great, right? And so you're tolerating certain things. And then we talked about compassion, which is level 4 energy, and that is focused around the thought that you win, I lose, right? So to recap, level 1 energy, I never win. Level 2, anger, I win, you lose. Level 3, forgiveness, I win and you can win too. Level 4 is you win, I lose. This is where service lives. Level 5, which is what we're talking about today's peace energy, and it says we all win or we do not play this game. Another episode you're going to want to listen to is my podcast that I did on the infinite game. So it's this idea of the world plays zero sum games. So, like soccer or football or zero sum games, there's a winner, there's a loser. But people who I work with that listen to this podcast inherently understand that the world is not a win or lose place. It's actually a place where you can create the game that you want to play. It's an unwinnable game. You get to pick the rules, you get to pick the people you want to play with. It's so much more aligned with who you are as an individual, and it is a much more natural place where you guys should be spending your time. And so check out that episode. It is episode 25 of the Humble Warrior podcast, Playing the Infinite Game. There's a whole couple of books written about it. It's really an amazing structure and mindset to utilize if you're trying to really reach your highest potential. Anyway, going back to our peace energy though, so you're much less judgmental and you start to accept people as they are really in this peace space, right? Because you're starting to think bigger, you're not focused on the street level. You're actually like in the air looking down at a much bigger area. You're able to see a lot more opportunity. Even when something goes bad, you inherently understand that it's all good, right? And so recently my husband and I had a thing happen. So it was we wake up very early, like 4:30 in the morning kind of thing. We're military people, can't help it, right? We just get a lot more done when we wake up that early. And so before 6 in the morning, my elderly dog peed and pooped in his bed and like rolled all around it. Like he's getting old and very senile. And my husband went to the gym, came home, he got a flat tire on the way home, all before 6 in the morning, right? So most people who operate in victim and anger energy would feel super victimy and super angry about it. They'd just be like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, look at like all the garbage always happens to me. This isn't fair. They'd get mad at the dog. Maybe you'd get mad about the tire being flat, whatever it is. I did not feel that way at all. And as far as I know, neither did my husband. So even though, the idea of like my dog peeing and pooping in his bed is not the most fun thing, honestly, it was an opportunity to love on and care for my elderly dog who's at the end of his life. He's like 16 or 17 years old. He's really, really old. And so being able to have a couple moments when it's still dark out to give him a nice warm bath. He smells super coconutty and good, right? Like I can truly be of service to him and love on him and just have this moment of connection with him where I'm taking care of him felt really good to me. And my husband getting a flat tire, we had to take the car in. And normally I work from home, but it was an opportunity for me to go into the office with him. And we had this little adventure of going down the road at 40 miles an hour to get to the tire place so I can drop it off. And then I got to have lunch with my husband. I got to chat with his coworkers. Like it was a really fun kind of little break from our routine and adventure that I'm really, really thankful for. And frankly, I had never experienced a flat tire where I went and got it patched. I've actually never had a flat tire before, which is a miracle. But I went through the discomfort of going to the tire shop, excuse me, and recognizing that they could patch it and it was actually free, which was wild to me and still sort of is, right? And so a lot of people say they want to win-win, but not many people actually walk the talk, which is why people have become more selfish over time. So the people listening to this podcast are very others oriented. You're very into community, collaboration, stuff like that. But you see more and more as the years pass that people are becoming inherently selfish and it's all about them. And you're kind of asking yourself, like, where are all the other people like me who want to invest in community, but want it to be equitable, right? You experience the giving, but not the receiving, and it can often feel like you're on an island. So a lot of people that come to me talk about how lonely they are, wondering if they're crazy because they're trying to create a world that is very collaborative and community focused, but they're having a hard time finding other people who aren't just taking and taking from them. And the reality is that based on, and I've traveled on almost all the continents except for Antarctica, doing work and working in different systems, corporate, government, whatever it might be. Like it's probably less than 20% of the population that are self-aware enough to tap into peace emotion. And frankly, if you're listening to this, it's you. That's who you are. This is where you're meant to be. So remember earlier I talked about the world operates in victimhood and in fear. And so whereas imposter phenomenon actually lives in victimhood, there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with it. As soon as you start working these steps, you work your way up to peace in this case. The struggle no longer becomes how do I get unstuck from the cycles that I'm in? The struggle becomes how do I learn how to interact with a world that is victimy and angry when I love peace, I love creating win-win situations in a space that isn't normally focused on that, right? And so part of the work for you is going to be in finding other like-minded people who also know this truth and they are out there and they're looking for you too. So whether you come to Joyful Money Club or you come to my community of imposter syndrome folks that we grow every year. Every year I do an end of year free event for my customers. So it doesn't matter if you've been with me for 8 years or this is your first year. The same folks come back usually in November, December of every year, and I do something special for those folks. And so those people are out there. You just have to find them, whether it's here or somewhere else. Like they're out there. If you are known as a fixer, this is actually an indicator that you tap into peace as an emotion a lot, right? You're a fixer because you see the opportunity where other people don't, but you're not just a fixer. You don't want to just fix something and move on to the next thing. You want to fix something, you want to help people also expand their ability to fix it themselves, right? So it's kind of the old saying of you don't want to just fish for other people, you want to teach other people how to fish. And so that's part of your magic is everywhere you go, you leave a big impact that has ripple effects that reach further out in spaces that you're not going to be quite sure about. And you have a much bigger impact than you realize, okay? If this is you, if this resonates, I want you to do a little bit of homework. If you're feeling frustrated and you're not quite sure you're bought into all this like life coaching stuff, I want you to go back to somebody that you worked with before that it's been a while. And I want you to ask them, hey, that work that I did back in the day, how did that impact the success of the office or the client success journey or whatever it is that you were doing, right? I just had a client do this not that long ago. They reached out to someone that they had a client in Europe and they got such amazing feedback. And not only did the client say how thrilled that they were with the work, but that client of mine actually won an award for doing the work that they had no idea about. So oftentimes people like you're fixing, you're creating impact, and then you're moving on to the next thing. And sometimes as a human, we need to hear the impact of the work that we do, but that requires you to do a little bit of work. So that in and of itself is creating a win-win, right? So it was vulnerable for him to go to this past client and say, hey, I just wanted to check in. How's that project going were there any results after I left that you can make me aware of? And the client could have told him no, he could have made fun of him, he could have done all kinds of things. But the client leaned in and said, oh my gosh, it was amazing. You did A, B, C, D. It resulted in this amazing award. And like, I'm so glad we're talking about it. And so in that way, my client received a win, right? Because they're asking for help from someone else to get positive feedback on the impact of the work and they received it. So that's a beautiful example right there of what creating a win-win looks like. So relationships, if you live in peace space, you're also always self-actualizing in relationships too. So you're pushing to maximize the output of your relationships, right? Because you see the benefits of sharpening each other. And the whole concept of iron sharpening iron lives here. So, iron sharpening iron is a biblical kind of phrase that talks about when we talk about iron, the way you make it sharp is by putting it against other iron and rubbing it against it, right? And so, in relationships, like your relationships should make you better as a person. You make them better, they make you better. You are also the average of the people you spend time with. This is the same concept put differently. So if you feel like you're not surrounded by other visionaries like you need to find other folks to hang out with so that you can be sharpened in the way that you deserve to be sharpened. And frankly, there's nothing more magical than a relationship that's equitable. Now, notice I didn't say equal, right? Because relationships are never equal, but they should be equitable. Where I have this amazing friend in England who I adore our relationship. It's so special because when we engage with each other, there are seasons that she's having a hard season and I can pour into her. There are seasons where I'm having a difficult season. I'm ugly, snuffable, crying, all the things, and she can pour into me. And it's very difficult to receive and not feel guilty for bothering people, right? Not taking up their precious time. Like these are common thoughts that people with imposter syndrome experience, right? Like, I don't want to bother you. I didn't want to call you, like all that stuff. This is where if you lean into the need for me is being loved on and supported, that's where you can create win-wins. That's where peace happens. You walk away from those conversations feeling so much better. The pressure's off a little bit, right? You feel seen, you feel loved, you feel supported. In relationships, that's a great example of what peace and win-win energy looks like, right? Now, again, the overall advantage is you see opportunities everywhere and you honestly don't take it that much personally because you're operating just at a higher level, right? The big disadvantage of peace emotion is actually you experience paralysis by analysis. And sometimes your optimism can cause you to take a little bit too much risk. So, what do I mean by that? What I mean is people who experience a lot of peace emotion, the downside is because you see the opportunity everywhere, you can see 10 options and you feel difficulty in deciding which option you want to take. So you actually don't take any action because you don't want to make a wrong mistake. Okay. And so again, this is a really great problem to have. And I love it when my clients get to that point where they're like, oh my gosh, I have so many options available. Or when they arrive that way. And I'm like, oh, honey, we just have to channel that emotion. We have to create a little bit of awareness, point you in a direction that aligns with you. And then the action that you take is going to bring the clarity that you're asking. And there are no mistakes, right? Because we're all winning because we're creating those circumstances. Man, that was a lot to cover. But for those of you who this resonates with, I want you to go out and experiment with creating win-wins. So remember, the win cannot be, I want someone else to win. That's not a true win. The win has to be something that makes you a little bit vulnerable and uncomfortable, right? So maybe it's calling a trusted friend and saying, hey, I'm on this journey of really leveling up, and I'm not entirely sure what my greatest gifts are or what I really bring to the table. Do you mind sharing with me what that is? Let someone else speak the love over you and then receive it, right? Your imposter syndrome is going to want to show up and say, nope, they're just saying that to be nice, all those things. You have a choice whether you want to believe that voice or not. But this is your mental gym that you need to get in and exercise a little bit, and you're going to crush it. The first workout's always the most comfortable, right? Other advantages. So if you are cooking something and the kind of traditional, you run out of sugar, like most people will drive out to the store and go buy the sugar. Go to the neighbor's house and ask for a cup of sugar. They don't have to give it to you, right? But it's an opportunity for you to ask for a win. It saves you the time from going to the grocery store. You build community, you build connection, right? These are very small little steps that you can take in creating win-wins. In terms of at your place of employment, if you're frustrated that you're not making the money you deserve, this is a perfect opportunity for you to practice win-win. So you're frustrated and resentful, you're not getting paid your worth. which honestly means that you're not producing as much as you could because people show up most powerfully when they're getting paid their value. And so going to the boss and saying, hey, I'd like to talk about a pay raise. Here's all the stuff that I do for the organization. Here are all the wins that I've created. Here are all the financial incentives that have come out of my work. And I would like to be paid X% more, right? Super difficult conversation. And we know that imposter syndrome impacts your finances in a big way. But if you need a little bit of help crafting that conversation, shoot me a note, DM me at Mighty Sparrow Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Let's talk about it. But that is a massive step that you can take in creating a win-win. Because if your employers value you, they're going to see and know that, hey, yeah, you actually are due for a raise, or maybe you're overdue, and tell you, we value you, and they're going to create that win back for you. You're going to feel more powerful, more amazing, because you're getting paid more of what you're actually worth, and you're going to show up more powerfully for your boss. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about how you felt about this episode. Shoot me a note. We actually have Joyful Money Club is starting up in September. And so registration's opening up this week if you want to register. So this is where we actually talk about net worth being tied to self-worth. So I'm an imposter syndrome coach, and money is a great tool to use to highlight and bring up all the subconscious junk that you have going on around your imposter syndrome. Money brings it out so clearly, and it's just a much easier tool to deal with it. And so we not only can deal with how to overcome your inner imposter, understanding your imposter cycle, but you actually make more money, your net worth goes up as a result. People are getting out of debt on this program. People are saving, they're understanding investing. They're having massive wins. We're learning how to celebrate and create momentum with those financial wins. And that translates to our self-worth in so many magical ways. Go back and look at any of the testimonials, or shoot me a note and ask me for testimonials. I'm happy to send them to you. But ultimately, I'm doing this because the world needs who you were meant to be. We are in a very difficult season in the world's timeline right now. And you holding yourself back from unleashing your gift is actually robbing the world of the gifts that they so desperately need. Whether you want to create a business, start a nonprofit, open a gym, open a beautiful coffee or lemonade stand, whatever that might be, the world needs that space. And you bring that magic, and you're not creating that because of your imposter syndrome. So join Joyful Money Club. We start in September. We're going to deal with all those end of year finances, right? Because we mostly overspend because you love other people. You're going to spend all of your money, and then January comes and you're going to be depleted, pissed off, resentful, and with an empty bank account. Let's stop that this year, shall we? We're going to have all kinds of amazing tools to talk about that. Shoot me a note if you have any questions. Alani at mightysparrowcoaching.com, or at Mighty Sparrow Coaching on all of the platforms. So, Humble Warriors, thank you so much for joining me today. Next time, we do have a guest episode next time, but in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of joy emotion, which is one step up from peace. And then after that, in our emotion series, we have one more about the advantages and disadvantages of passion energy. So you're going to want to stick around, subscribe to the episode, get notified when it drops, because Humble Warriors actually primarily operate from that joy space. And once you tap into that, that's when all the magic happens. So Humble Warriors, I love you. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being here. Shoot me a note, drop a comment. Let me know if this was helpful for you and what else you want to see. Otherwise, remember, what you think is your weakness is the key to unlocking your greatest superpower. Thank you, Humble Warriors. See you next time. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at Alani at mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI at mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.